Welcome. I wanted to say a few more remarks about this Morse-Sard theorem, which we have already looked at a couple of times, which is remarkable. In a setting of discrete manifold, we have level surfaces. With arbitrary many functions, we have level surfaces which are always manifolds or empty. And we mathematicians love to play. We love toys, we love examples. In the context of manifolds, there are many toys lying around, and I wanted to mention especially collection of manifolds which have been produced by Frank Lutz, who passed away 2 weeks ago. I never met him, but he has a fantastic library of manifolds. It's no problem to take this and implement that into Mathematica. It's one line of Perl code. You have just to replace square brackets, you have to replace with curly brackets, and then it's readable by Mathematica, and you can do computations there. For example, compute the Betty vectors. So it's a kind of a nice playground also then to look at surfaces in these manifolds. And these surfaces are always manifolds or empty, which is really cool. But first of all, a few remarks. So there is no restriction on f, and that's very, very important, because if you look at distance functions on the manifold, for example, we can look at level surfaces, and these are always manifolds, which is completely different than in the continuum, where the level surfaces, produce caustic, have very complicated shape. So they are manifolds, so it's always true. For example, we can take the value -1 and 1, so it's kind of in a statistical mechanic setting where we have just spin values, and then we can look where these changes and these interfaces are then manifolds. So it's very nice. And also kind of just from Whitney's embedding theorem follows directly that we can realize any manifold like that. A remark here about the different categories which one looks at. So there are analytic manifolds, smooth manifolds, PL manifolds, I forgot the topological manifolds. Different classes at least. And what we are looking at is something very, very constructive. We are looking at manifolds which can be checked easily whether they are manifolds. And checking that something is a manifold means checking that the unit spheres are spheres. So you have to do sphere recognition. So that's another thing I wanted to remark. One of the low-hanging fruits is that if you have an orientable manifold and you look at the level surface, then this is again orientable. And so you can iterate that, and so if you take level surfaces of level surfaces, also if you take several functions, this is orientable, which implies Poincare duality. So if you look at the Betty vectors, these are palindromes here, if it's orientable. So there's an example. RP3 would be orientable, but RP4 is not orientable, and so this is not. There's no Poincare duality. Also, if we look at fiber bundles where things are twisted, the simplices, the faces, and this will define the manifold completely. You can generate with that the simplicity complex, and then so the graph. So if you are interested in visualizing that, you want to look at graphs, which are also very intuitive. Representations, a set representation of the manifolds, they don't actually tell you much how they look like. You can look at RP4 with that manifold here, 4-dimension 2 surfaces, which means level surfaces of complex valued functions, and then you see Klein bottles, with handles, and so on. Or you see also orientable manifolds. If you're looking at these level surfaces, they are just given a set of simplices where the functions change sign with some non-degeneracy condition, and which replaces this maximal rank condition which we have in the continuum. And then what we have is we have just delta sets and not yet simplicial complexes. You can produce them from that the graph, and so a simplicial complex. But these are actually kind of, these level sets are a priori just open sets. Open sets are examples of delta sets. I'm getting more and more fond of delta sets because you can take products of delta sets and you have a nice still delta set, and you can take quotients, and you can take manifolds, submanifolds, surfaces, and so on. it's a very nice framework to work with, and especially small. So it's important that we have small numbers so that the matrices for the computation of the cohomology, for example, are not too big. I'm also interested in, of course, I will also look at the Wu characteristic, the Wu cohomology things. So maybe there is some kind of interesting thing there. Maybe something about this, last time talked about this baby universe story. It's actually quite interesting also from a differential geometric point of view. If you let a wavefront move away from a point, you have kind of a concrete function which you can, this distance function. This distance function is quite complicated for a manifold in general, but think about this as time in a space-time manifold, and then this is the wavefront, that's the place, that's space. And if you start at another point, that would be kind of a change of reference, a relativistic setup. But you have a notion of radius of injectivity, which is really, really kind of what you would like to have in the discrete. This is kind of interesting also already in the classical setup. If you take a manifold like a donut and you let the wavefront move, and so you have to compute lots of geodesics. And then finally there is a kind of also related to Lutz, because there is a paper of Lutz and other collaborators who have worked on the problem to recognize spheres. So it's kind of a futile, considered a futile task, because already Novikov knew 50 years ago that sphere recognition is undecidable. So there is no algorithm which tells you, given a simplicity complex, whether it's a sphere or not. Which of course implies also that manifold recognition is undecidable. However, the definition we are looking at, which is this based on this Evacco recursive idea, it's a very elegant definition. We just take contractibility, not homotopic to one. If you take homotopic to one, then you are in that mud and you don't know. You cannot decide it. But and this, you have complete control here about whether complex is contractible or not, because what you have to do is you have just to check smaller complexes whether they are contractible. It's recursive and it's relatively fast in practice. With that, you can then also check that something is a sphere, and so you can check also that something is a manifold. So maybe I stop here.